who I have here. Looky here. Look who the cat dragged in, Mr. Lord Reebs. I said on the template, the nameplate for the show, it's got to say Lord Reebs. It's not going to say Rich Hribar. You are Lord Reebs, always and forever. Your Twitter handle. Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program, my friend.
Yeah, there was a Roto Reebs for an hours a period, if people remember that, you know.
Wait, what? Explain Roto Reebs?
Do you remember that at all? Do you remember that
I vaguely remember that you tried to be closer to like a fantasy handle, and that was just your decision.
Story, like my handle, Lord Reebs, was kind of when the time I was coming on Twitter was like peak, like Game of Thrones was like the show, right? Like it was everyone, and like honestly, it was like such a phenomenon that I don't even know when the next time we'll see. Remember, that's a whole other sidebar conversation. But remember, everyone's watching Thrones like live together. Like you couldn't even like get online.
It was a big deal.
But so I created the handle. I wasn't doing this with any intention of like actually where I am today. So I just like created a handle like Lord Reebs. And I thought like, oh, like as I started to grow like a fantasy following, everything, I was like, oh, this is like pretentious as shit. Like people probably like think like, like fantasy guru 101 or like, shit like that. It's like, I need to change my handle. So I changed it to Roto Reebs, thinking it was like catchy, whatever. It said like Run for Johnny laughed. He made like he thought it was like a plumbing business, like, sounded like a plumbing business. Roto Reebs, but literally no one grabbed the handle though while it was out there. Like as I dropped Lord Reebs, no one scooped and like grabbed it. But I remember listening to a podcast, like it was maybe like 2 days later, and Pat Doherty was like, "What a mistake Rich made!" Like it was like what a premium handle, he let it go, and I was like, if Roto Pat's saying I made a mistake, like I definitely probably effed up. I was like, I need to grab
as soon as he said that though, you got to go grab it. Grab it.
Yeah, so I did. Someone
take it.
I was able to go back and scoop it and get it and reclaim it, but luckily no one squatted on it or grabbed it. And cause remember when Roto World changed their name to Sports Edge or whatever, someone immediately went and grabbed the Roto World handle. Like someone went and grabbed it.
Wait, Roto World, this I missed.
Yeah, do you remember when like they did like the whole rebranding or whatever? They dropped their Twitter handle, they changed it, and someone went and grabbed it like immediately.
So they became the Edge?
Whatever they were, like whatever they changed it, but what they changed it, I don't know if they ended up buying it back or someone got it, but like someone else immediately went and got it when they dropped it. Like someone immediately claimed it. Like if you even go on old Fantasy Douche's Twitter, someone is squatting on that. Like someone claimed that. The people now, like the youths, don't remember Fantasy Douche, but like someone went and grabbed that.
I've asked people. I was like, do you know what Fantasy Douche means? If I said Fantasy Douche, would you have any reference point?
But someone is sitting on that handle. I actually know who's sitting on that handle. But yeah, when Roto World left, someone grabbed. But luckily, I was able to reclaim the Lord Reebs handle, and now it is like I guess I learned a lesson. I just know people don't treat me like that. I guess maybe I've been on enough shows and they just know I'm not a dickhead. Or at least the majority of people don't think I'm a dickhead. I'm sure there are people that think I'm a dickhead out there.
I don't think anyone thinks you're a dickhead. People think I'm a dickhead for sure, but not you. So someone has the Fantasy Douche handle and they're sitting on it just in case, like pending his return.
Just in case.
They're sitting on it just in case, waiting for the return.
And I know a few people actually know him. Your old, buddy, Pete Overzet has actually met the real Fantasy Douche in person. He's like one of the few that has had like actual live interaction with him.
I've talked to Pete about where he lives, and he won't disclose anything. It's all very mysterious. It's a very cool story that a guy came out of the ether, built RotoViz, handed the keys off to Sean Siegel and others, and just sort of melted back away. Where because
I wrote for them for a couple of years, and like he's very influential on like how my writing is and like the way we pose questions and content. But I never once knew his real name. I never met him, never saw him. I've heard his voice one time. I think he did like one blurb video for like a blurb for one of the shows, and like I heard his voice one time.
Yeah, so the speculation he has a government job, right? That you or some big corporate job, and he can't let the two worlds collide. When he launched RotoViz, it was similar to Bill Simmons launching the Ringer, but for fantasy.
Yes.
So if Bill Simmons could have chosen to stay in the background and never, but he was already obviously big personality with his own site and then with ESPN. But yeah, this was the equivalent of someone like that in fantasy football. That's how big Fantasy Douche was and how well respected he was when all that launched in the
you'll never
mid-teens.
meet a human who will tell you you're wrong as kindly as Fantasy Douche. Like,
that's right.
He just had a way of eloquently telling you how wrong you were, and you weren't even offended by it. You weren't even offended.
2,000 words. He'll get a cup of coffee, sit down, relax, and then over the course of 2,000 words, you realize just how wrong you are.
Amazing, just incredible.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, I'm bummed that we didn't have a show before the draft because I like talking to you before the draft. I was in Japan, flex, and your son's going to Japan, which he's going to love.
Yeah, he is. Big humble brags. I'm not going to Japan.
Well, I did the same thing. Like, my parents put me on a plane and sent me to San Diego. You take the early flight home from San Diego.
Yeah.
And a bunch of naked people jump out at you. Like, it's a goddamn magic show. So, yeah, no naked people jumped out at me in San Diego. But, yeah, so I had a whole family, uncles and aunts in San Diego, and so that was a really big deal to go to the Bangor International Airport and fly by myself with back in the day they called them a stewardess. This was back when they called them a stewardess would escort me onto the plane and give me a seat and look after me, and then they would hand me off to like a gate agent, and then they would walk with me. So it was it just felt really cool, and I felt really grown up. And then being away from home for weeks was just California versus Maine. You might as well be in Tokyo, right? And then I came home and I came back and I went to school. I was all chill. I was all California chill. For like 2 weeks I was too cool. So that happened. So he's gonna love it. It's gonna be a great experience. Just being by himself and being sort of untethered. Super cool.
But yeah, we missed our annual. Usually, I think we were on like a 5 or 6 year run pre-draft, and a lot of great gems were kind of discussed. I think I've always called this my Coors Field of podcasts. I've referred to that multiple times. I've had a lot of dingers on this podcast. Last year I was. I'll start with the miss though. I mean, I think about it. I was hesitant on Jahmyr Gibbs. As a rookie pre-draft last year, he ends up getting like the nut capital and landing spot, and he was one of the better rookie picks you could have made. So I start with if you remember at this time last year, I came on your show and told everyone that the most fragile dynasty asset was Justin Fields, and look what happened. My God. It bottomed out, and I tried to sell you on Puka Nacua. You weren't having that, but that was fine, But Justin, look where Justin Fields is now. He's dead, dude. Dead. His dynasty value is gone. Just disappeared.
Yeah, you said sell Justin Fields, buy Puka Nacua. That was last year.
But I was hesitant on Gibbs, and he rubbed. So we gotta own the L's too.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wish they were higher on Puka Nacua.
Even me, like a guy that was high. I wish I was higher. I wish I had 100% of him. I wish that happened.
I didn't see it. I was like, similar game to Cooper Kupp, except Cooper Kupp's still there. And then Cooper Kupp wasn't there, and then he was putting up Cooper Kupp games as a rookie, which is just weird. It was great. It was awesome.
Yeah, right out of the box, man. I've always loved coming on this show. I've had a lot of dope takes here that have been transcended through time.
Yeah, and you're in these leagues. I love talking to you. Pre-draft now is also great because you're in these leagues where the rookie draft happens before the draft, before the NFL draft. So are you still in those leagues?
Yeah, I still am. I've been in with like a lot of people that you guys are in, like, Pat Thorman, Matthew Berry, Scott Barrett, you have Silva's in those leagues. It's Rob Wozniak, a lot of really good people that are good at the game that a lot of people follow. Those drafts happen pre-draft. I think it's the most optimal thing, right? Like I think that's the best way to do your dynasty leagues if your gamers are willing to, because you have to have conviction on your takes, right? Like there are no free passes. Like Troy Franklin, right? Like Troy Franklin is the guy that was going at the 1-2 turn in these drafts, and now he's no longer going at the 1-2 turn because he went pick 100 in the NFL draft. I think of other examples like Hakeem Butler, the year he was the Bustler, you called him, the Hakeem Bustler. He was going like 101, 102 in those drafts, and everyone got that hall pass. Malik Willis, another guy a couple years ago, was going really high because these are super flex leagues, all the ones I'm in pre-draft. And then, he goes in the third round and everyone gets that free pass in those leagues that draft after the draft. And you're just like, oh, yep, a call pass for everybody. But yeah, unfortunately, in the leagues that I did do those in, like I went kind of all in like these previous years. I have, not a humble brag, I have good teams in those leagues, and I've been really pushing for titles. So I didn't have a lot of early capital. When one of the ones I'm in, I've literally lost the championship 4 years in a row. And I had 0 draft picks this year pre-draft. I traded all like this entire draft class trying to get assets to help me get over the hump. And I just can't, I'm just a perpetual bridesmaid in this league. I lose in the championship every damn year. Barry beat me this year in the championship. Or no, Barry didn't beat me. It was Dynasty Trades beat me in the thing. But like, yeah, Barry beat me 1 year. Barrett and those guys beat me 1 year. It's like, damn it, I cannot get over the hump. And the other one I'm in, I didn't have a first round pick. Cause same story. I was pushing, and I ended up trading my one to try to get. I think I got Alvin Kamara and like Cortland Sutton to try to push, and lost in the finals again. Like just bullshit. But can't get over. That's what happens, man. That's the dynasty life. Sometimes you gotta go, and then you don't have these picks, so you hate it, man.
You missed out on.
But I can share the drafts with anyone if you got some questions. So I told they're all super flex leagues, and I was joking with Ryan McDowell on my show. Marvin Harrison went 101. He went ahead of Caleb Williams in all of them.
What?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So Marv went 101. And we like kind of knew Caleb was going to the Bears, like he was locked in.
These clearly start 3 receivers.
You start more. You can start more than 3 receivers.
Start 4 receivers. Okay, if you can start 4 or 5 receivers, there's like 3 receiver starting positions plus at least 2 flex. Now you're potentially starting 5 receivers.
Yep.
This is where like the depth at the receiver position starts to get pushed, and a guy like Marvin Harrison's value goes up and up and up.
Yeah, you could start up to 6 in like these leagues. So
okay.
Like
that's different. That it's understandable. I still go Caleb there, but it's understandable.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get into maybe when we're talking about some of the individual players in this class that presented unique opportunities. But like, if you play in these super flex leagues, like the quarterbacks are they're their own separate currency in super flex leagues.
Yeah.
So like, guys like, for years, and gamers finally caught on though, like where, they're like when Justin Herbert would fell, or, Daniel Jones fell, and like granted Daniel Jones like could be on the brink of losing his dynasty value now as well. But like those guys, you no longer see those guys go at like the 1-2 turn. Josh Allen was another one. Like people are like, Josh Allen sucks, I'm not drafting him even in super flex leagues. And I'm like, all right. So I have like a shitload of Josh Allen to super flex because the currency angle. I just on principle was drafting those quarterbacks. Now it's a little bit different.
Well, let's go back to that draft for a second, because I believe that was the Kyle Pitts draft.
The
Justin Herbert.
Herbert was right.
That's Jahmyr Chase. Right?
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah. So
Pitts was with Burrow, right?
Okay, so
no.
Pitts with.
Am I wrong? Why am I losing that? I'm usually better at these things.
Yeah, we'll check it. We'll check it. But the bottom line is, there were leagues where
Pitts was Chase, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields were the top guys. Trey Lance, that was the Zach Wilson whole debacle shit.
Right. Okay, but the year of Justin Herbert was the year before.
Yes.
Right. And so, okay. So who was going in that draft?
In which one? The Herbert draft?
The Herbert draft. That was the Justin Jefferson draft.
Yes. That was CeeDee Lamb, Lamb, Judy.
Jalen Reagor.
Jalen Reagor.
So that, yes. Okay. So I just want to make sure I'm calibrated here.
Jonathan Taylor. That was the Jonathan Taylor.
Jonathan Taylor, fine. But there was Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, dude. You had Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jerry Jeudy. I don't think Henry Ruggs was going ahead of Herbert. I never saw Henry Ruggs go ahead of Herbert. People knew Henry Ruggs was likely a bust. But Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Reagor, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I saw drafts that happened in Superflex where Justin Herbert went behind all those guys. That's a thing that happened. That's how – it's not that long ago that there was just a general misallocation of resources in rookie drafts.
What a great
and an underappreciation of the quarterback position. It's now corrected where that would never happen. But
yes, yeah. And that's what I think is interesting when we get to the quarterbacks in this class, when we get there. But looking at that draft class, wow, there were some awesome picks. I mean, obviously Jalen Hurts became like a mega value in that draft. Brandon Ayuk, Michael Pittman, Jordan Love now looks like, I wonder how many gamers that drafted Jordan Love still have Jordan Love from those dynasty rosters, or if they traded him or moved on, or he was sold off or stuff. But yeah, those guys all were late, second round plus picks that were hits, man. Absolute bangers.
2020. That was 2020. And 2020, it was a feast or famine year. You had massive nuclear hits and massive nuclear busts back to back. We talk about Jalen Reagor and Justin Jefferson. I mean, doesn't get any different than that. So let's say you did have a pick in the late first, in early April. Would you have been considering like a Michael Penix, a Bo Nix?
Not those two particular guys.
Are those the play, because those might have been those would have been available because they were supposed to go in the latter part of the first round.
Yeah, those guys took a little bit more kind of because remember previous 2 years we always get that April QB steam, right? Last year, it was Will Levis. Will Levis is going to go 4 overall. He ends up going in the second round. The year before, we talked about Malik Willis. Malik Willis is going as the first rounder. He goes in the third round. Desmond Ridder also got late steam that year as a first rounder and didn't come close to that kind of capital. So Penix and Nix, you still kind of had to take some faith in the system for them getting that draft capital. But they all also felt like guys that if they ended up being second round day 2 picks, that seemed more palatable because very unique situation we have this year with that COVID year, right? And obviously you can include Jaden Daniels in this conversation. These guys all, I don't know if exploit's the right word I want to use, but they took advantage of that. They took real advantage of that extra year being able to play. I mean, we've got these 3 guys that got to play 50. Dude, Bo Nix played 60 college fucking games. You never see that type of experience, especially tied to first rounders. The only other quarterbacks in the 2000s that even played over 50 games that were taken in round 1 were Carson Palmer and Kenny Pickett. You just never see this type of stuff. And obviously these guys all shred playing at the collegiate level with their kind of experience. And then Bo Nix obviously has this other multiple layers in because he played behind the best offensive line in the country. No one even breathed on him the entire year in the Pac-10 out there. But those guys took a little bit of step of faith to even believing the capital was real. And, they ended up getting massive capital, obviously Penix too, especially with the landing spot kind of blowing everyone's minds that night. So they took a step of faith pre-draft to take those guys. Now I think where you're drafting now, you're going to see Bo Nix go in that area. Maybe even a little bit later than that. But he's probably if you're taking I'm just taking the cheapest guys at that area. I do think that now it's become a situation now where these guys have become overrated, especially when you look at 2 QB and Superflex, because I don't think these guys prerequisitely have the type of ceiling to compete to run off multiple QB1 seasons, right? All of these guys are going to have to flirt with throwing 40 passing touchdowns. They're not dead in the Konami factor. All these guys give you a little bit. of rushing, but all of these guys definitely fall into like that spectrum of if they max out, they fall in like that Burrow, Herbert, Trevor Lawrence type archetype. And like we've seen now over the past couple years, like the fragility of that tier and how overvalued those guys are, even from a dynasty stance, because you're able to still arbitrage those guys on a given year. Your QB soups and QB platoons are always going to be able to kind of, I think, give or take a year where these guys do hit the nuts and they do throw the 40 passing touchdowns, because they will have a couple of those seasons in their career. But your QB platoons and, like I said, what you're able to hodgepodge, like you're going to run down and arbitrage those guys most years. We've seen that they've been overvalued now. So I do think there is some fragility to taking a guy like JJ McCarthy now at 108 in Superflex, or Bo Nix at 110 in Superflex, versus previous years where we talked about you're getting Josh Allen, like you're getting a specific archetype of a guy that could really be the QB1 overall. I don't think that any of these quarterbacks really fit that archetype. And that's why I'm a little bit hesitant. But I mean, obviously, when we're talking from the currency angle, I think you take those guys versus like the Keon Colemans, right? Like you.
I was criticized on the Sonic Truth podcast. We did a Dynasty mock. I was criticized for taking Odunze over JJ McCarthy. That's the world we live in, man. That's where we're at. I'm like, I'm going Odunze, dude. What do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, so I do think that those guys end up being overvalued. I mean, dude, like, and we've seen it now. Like, this is what gamers get wrong with Superflex and tight end premium. Those formats make the really good players really fucking good. Like, but they don't change anything for like the good to like bottom rung tiers. Like, they don't make Derek Carr good. Like, Superflex doesn't make Derek Carr a great fantasy asset, but that's what gamers get wrong. And you see stuff like the Fishbowl, right? Like you see this every damn summer. Dude, I was in the Scott Fishbowl. I picked 111 or 112 and I got Christian McCaffrey. Like, because people are taking guys like Daniel Jones and Trevor Lawrence and like those quarterbacks are getting pushed up because they think that, like, that archetype, you're going to arbitrage those guys. Those guys have to run so pure. This is where people get super flex and like I said, tight end premium too, especially when you do your FFPC and all those dudes are just hammering purple, where they're taking like Dalton Schultz in the 5th round and shit. You're like, what is happening? Like, what is it? Like, you're like,
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm on the Sonic Truth podcast with 2 co-hosts. One of them is a complete and utter quarterback hog in Superflex. The other is a tight end stan in tight end premium. You can't get Theo off Bowers. You can't get a guy like Alan Seslowsky off Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy. And I'm like, am I losing my mind here? I'm just going with Rome Odunze, who essentially can't fail. He's one of the more can't fail prospects that we've seen. So I'm going to go ahead and take that guy, let you guys do your thing. I'm going to get a top 3 receiver. And I think what you I'll be able to figure out a quarterback.
Picks. Yeah, so if you are holding those picks right now, let's say like 105, 16, and beyond in Superflex, you're on the clock and your quarterback room's fine, right? Let's just say it's fine. You have to scour the gamers in your league that don't have quarterbacks. You have to go to those people and knock on their door personally, like a Jehovah's Witness, and say, I have 105. You need JJ McCarthy. And then you try to get futures and assets there because you have to play the currency game there. You don't want to force Brian Thomas Jr. or whatever over JJ McCarthy because the currency of those. You need to go, like I said, to your gamers and you're in those leagues. Find the room that just they are just clenching. Like, what am I going to do at quarterback? I had Kenny Pickett 2 years ago. He's dead now. You have to go to those gamers and say, like, you need this pick 105, pick 106, and you need this player.
You tried to get me off Pickett. You did,
and you use it to sell up.
Yeah. So
because those guys, I mean, you can be fine. Like if you're going to take JJ McCarthy 105, 106. I think that's largely more or less fine. He's going to retain value for the first 2 years, but like also he's never going to punch up at the QB position. He's never going to make your QB. He's always gonna be part of a platoon system. Like he's never going to be a guy you're going to lock in as a QB1 ever.
Yeah. So
you might moonlight, you might have a QB1 season, but like he's never going to be locked in as a QB1 in terms of like setting a lineup.
No. And the one guy that I think is an interesting talking point here. Yeah, fuck Bo Nix, right? I mean, get out of here. Kenny Pickett, right? That reminds me of Bo Nix. It's same guy, right? The question is, Michael Penix, the big Penix. What do you do? Right? So for me, that's the guy that has the requisite QB1 upside where, okay, that's the guy I'll take, right? The top 3 receivers are off the board. Now I'm in Penix mode. That's where I'm at. And that's where I thought, maybe you saw him with the Konami code in April thinking maybe he goes late first round even. You would have pushed the button on him because of that super flex upside.
I took him in one of those ones we talked about at 211. My first pick in the one league where I said
you got him at 211.
Yeah, he went 211 in that one and got him.
He's
more on like the Stroud spectrum. Like he's not like a full Konami guy. Like he probably is going to run more in the NFL than he did in college. He didn't really have to because again he played in a system with like 3 great receivers against defenses that didn't breathe on him. So he never really had to run or like be tested to run. I think he will run more in the NFL because he is an athletic guy that is capable of running. And obviously he had some early career injuries that kind of stunted some of his mobility as well. But even before the first ACL, he wasn't like running like wild at Indiana either. He's more, like I said, on the Stroud spectrum. He's not a Jaden Daniels. Like Jaden Daniels is like the full Konami guy in this class.
Do you have Do you have Jaden Daniels over Caleb Williams?
I don't have pushback on people that do. So I don't, because I think just from a safety stance, like I am pretty confident in Caleb's second contract beyond, or Jaden Daniels, I think maybe has some Fields-esque fragility, like for second contract. Like there's an outcome where you look at Jaden Daniels and you say it played out similar to Justin Fields and he's not able to like recoup that second contract value. But I have no pushback in anyone saying Jaden Daniels has a higher fantasy ceiling than Caleb Williams. I absolutely have none, because I don't think Caleb's going to run as much in the NFL as he did in college. He's going to be more touchdown based for rushing. Like he's not going to flirt with like the 700 plus rushing yards. I don't think. I think you're going to see him actually throw the football a lot more. So you need more touchdowns from Caleb Williams, but he's like great in that RPO game inside the 5 that he absolutely killed in that in the USC. So he can do that at, in Chicago with Shane Waldron, but like Jaden Daniels with Cliff even, and people forget like Cliff, the head coach, and Cliff, the offensive coordinator, are 2 different entities. Cliff was a donkey head coach, but like all of the guys for Cliff still got there for fantasy for us. And like he had rookie year Kyler, and Kyler was QB8 as a rookie, QB12 in points per game. And I think Jaden Daniels is actually going to beat that because he's fucking going to run around, dude. Like he's going to run around like crazy. Kyler ran a lot. I think he ran 95 times as a rookie, but like Jaden Daniels is going to rush over 100 times. That's his game, dude. Like, 45% of his dropbacks either a sack or a scramble last year. Like he's either chuck it, he's scramble, he's not check it down. I have no problem with anyone that is swinging for the fences and just saying, I'm going to play Jaden Daniels for the most optimal outcome, hell or high water. And I know that there's a bust factor here, but if he hits, it's going to be glorious.
Oh, totally. I mean, dude, unbelievable.
Right. And he has a way better rookie foundation than rookie Justin Fields had going to Chicago. I mean, you look at that situation in Washington, obviously you have Dotson and McLaurin, but they actually have like, it looks like a plan, getting, Ben Sinnott, they have, Austin Eckler. They have like capable shallow dudes that like, because I, always joke about it being called, instead of the air raid, it's the horizontal raid. You have horizontal raid assets in place with, Eckler and those guys. So I actually think the early career landing spot for Jaden Daniels actually is kind of a pro too. I think he's really great. He's plus 650 for rookie of the year right now. I think that's a very, very good. Throw some ducats on that. I think
that's an incredible bet. And also McLaurin has a lot of Malik Neighbors in him and vice versa.
Yeah, I think all those guys, have upside there too. So Washington in general could be a fun fantasy team. I hope their defense is as shitty as it was last year. We hope that happens again.
Yeah, they just get the improved offensive line. You get the shallow weapons. You got McLaurin in all quadrants, and then just pull the ball down and run.
Because that was LSU. LSU was last year Washington Commanders. Their defense was ass, and that's why Daniels put up all those numbers, because LSU would give up a touchdown in 5 plays, and Jaden Daniels is back on the field. And they're scoring. He had to score 35 points.
Yeah, I don't think that he has a Brian Thomas in Washington. That's not. I'm not. You're not hopeful for Dotson, are you?
I'm mixed. I mean, I think he was, he was better as a rookie than he was last year. Obviously, last year was so bad, it's hard to feel like positive. But
Right.
I'm in between. I'm in between on him.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so basically, you just talked us all into going with the Daniels over Caleb Williams.
I think you can make the case. I think it exists. I just think from a dynasty perspective, Caleb comes with more career insulation.
Okay. Cool. That sounds good. Do you hear anything going on there?
It's beautiful.
I feel like something in my ear. I can't. What is that? It's some strange sound in my earphones. My cans, if you will. It's time. It's time, Mitch. It's time to really get into this. We're only 30 minutes in. Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program. Our Lord and Savior for Dynasty Leagues, and especially your rookie drafts. This guy knows things from sharp football. A good friend of mine for now 10 years in this business. It is Rich Hribar. Talk to me.
Dude, I mean, imagine not getting fired up about that. I mean, I gotta start playing that like when I have to like cut the grass and stuff, because my weekend warrior days are long gone. I don't get to play. I actually did tweet out 2 years ago. I went to nationals and we won nationals for 35 and older flag, but that was my last run. I'm officially retired, so I don't do anything cool anymore. I might have to start playing that like when I get fired up, like go out in the yard and do some shit.
You're a very good flag football receiver. I've seen it.
I used to be. I don't think this. What's funny is when you get older, because I lost a bunch of weight, recently. But like you don't get faster as you get older. I got lighter, but I didn't recoup any speed I had.
No.
I still was, had no speed. And you feel for these athletes, right? Because I'm in the context of like weekend warrioring some stuff, and you just feel for these guys as their careers get older. It's like, man, like you just can't regain it. You can't regain that athleticism.
It's gone. It's gone forever. And you once in a while though, like you understand. Like once I turned 40, I fully understood the Ben Roethlisberger career, in that Ben Roethlisberger would just wake up on a Sunday morning and not have it. Like he wouldn't have it. Nothing would work. It was clear that he needed oil in the joints and he just couldn't get going, the Tin Man situation. And that's what it's like. That's what I can tell people. Once in like I play basketball on Fridays, and I just never know. I never know how I'm going to feel and how I'm going to play. It's just I couldn't tell you. Whereas like when you're, in your 20s, every time you go out and participate in athletics, you get this pretty much the same performance every time.
Yeah, I mean, and just the what's required now to like ramp up, like even for me to exercise, like I have to ramp up to exercise, and like
yes.
Like if you just asked me right now, if I had to just sprint in a situation, if like we were in an action movie like Tom Cruise, like there's an earthquake and I gotta run, I'm probably pulling something. Something's breaking. Like if I haven't stretched, like I have to sprint my fullest, I'm gonna fall apart. Absolutely fall apart.
No, it's crazy. It's crazy. But hey, man, to me, that's better than, not being mobile at all. Like and that's the thing with health and fitness. You just want to have the baseline mobility to do things, right? When my parents are getting older, and when you see them just not being able to do things that they were able to do before, that's when you really, you sort of wish that you would put the work in to do the squat, the body weight squats and the push-ups and all those things. And, that's, if I had to think of a reason why I, swim and try to exercise at least once a day whenever I can. It's an investment in my 70s. That's now
Absolutely.
what it is. That's the best way to explain it. So let's get into this. I'm just gonna go first question:
Whatever.
Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs in Bestball?
I like Bijan a little bit more. I still like him for like an overall, upside stance. And this obviously changes here that we're going to see in Atlanta, with our guy Arthur Smith, moving on. But you look at what he is able to still do, and I think some people kind of almost think like Bijan was almost kind of a letdown, maybe because of the redraft ADP. But 1,400 yards and 8 touchdowns. But think about this: only 5 running backs had more total yards than him last year. And he did that on 50.6% of his backfield touches. The other guys ahead of him had 69.5% of their backfield touches, 72%, 62%, 76%, and 76%. Now, I believe we're going to see some ramp up. Tyler Algier is not going to go away, but I think that we're going to see Bijan clear.
No, I think he will go away.
Well, maybe. Well, either way,
I think he's going away. I don't think at this point. I don't think you can't take Bijan off the field. It's not going to make any sense. He's going to be such a combination of sports car and off-road utility vehicle. There's no way.
But either way, so we're in agreement that just that 51% is going to go up.
Oh, it's going to go up by a lot. I think.
And I don't.
We're talking about full bell cow usage in one of the NFL's top offenses. I think that he should be in play for the 101 in fantasy.
But I don't think we're going to objectively say, like, without an injury, Jahmyr Gibbs' touch share is going to go up. Like, David Montgomery is not going to go away.
That's correct.
And that's kind of like the one, like hanging on, kind of threat. Now, I will say...
That's why Bijan, by the way, has significantly more upside than Gibbs. See, that's not talked about. That, at median projection, you could argue it's Gibbs. Upside, it's Bijan. Because Gibbs is not a bell cow back, never will be.
And, there was, and I made this mistake last year coming into rookie drafts. Like, there is now with the current, offensive meta, the way people are, playing the running back position from a coach down stance, like a place for Gibbs now in fantasy football that didn't exist a decade ago when we had multiple, we'd have almost a dozen backs pushing 300 touches. We don't have that anymore. So it's made the archetype of a Jahmyr Gibbs, a DeVon Achane, a lot more fantasy viable than they would have been 10, 15 years ago. These guys now have a home to flirt with, RB1 plus production, which they wouldn't have had in, a decade ago because just too many other running backs are getting more overall touches than them. And you would have some kind of fragility of some guys that are more touchdown dependent are going to be in like that 200 to 240 touch range. But now those guys do have an avenue to be, kind of fantasy viable. But David Montgomery also was really good at football last year. And we did see, so from week 10 on, because what's funny is they both missed time, but the first 10 weeks of the season, and anytime Montgomery was out, Gibbs smashed. Anytime Gibbs was out, Montgomery smashed. Like they were just so incredible. But from week 10 on, we just saw they were completely 1A1 usage. From week 10 on, Gibbs had 130 touches for 697 yards from scrimmage and 9 touchdowns. David Montgomery had 135 touches for 681 yards from scrimmage and 7 touchdowns. And and it's not even they were used interchangeably too. Gibbs was used on like pure passing downs. He ran a lot more routes than David Montgomery. But inside the 10, Gibbs had 17 touches, Monty 15. Inside of the 5-yard line, Montgomery 9 touches, Gibbs 7. Like it wasn't like a clear like Raheem Mostert, DeVon Achane situation where like Mostert still had like all the monopoly touches that you wanted. So it is still kind of a 1A, 1B situation where Bijan, like I said, doesn't really have that. He is kind of more clearly ahead of Tyler Algier, even if you're factoring a split for Tyler Algier. But anytime one of those Detroit running backs does miss time, that's when DFS, you just fucking hammer Detroit RB1 into all your lineups. Because we've seen it now. Ben Johnson, 2 years in a row, like this is a staple. Like he uses those backs in the red zone. It was Jamal Williams 2 years ago and even some Swift, in the passing game. But like they utilize the running backs in the red zone offense as a core component of the red zone offense. So like we can't even fade Gibbs for like him living on touchdowns, because we've now seen Ben Johnson. That's where he wants to utilize those backs in the red zone.
And you mentioned DeVon Achane. We're going to talk about another running back in the Miami backfield, not named DeVon Achane, and we'll get into it after this. This episode is brought to you by Player Profiler, the Dynasty Deluxe package. The rankings are the best in the industry. It includes strategy mode, where you can say, hey, change the rankings to be win now. Oh, change the rankings to be productive struggle. There's also a draft planner to help to strategize where you should take players, because the draft planner also includes ADP. There's a trade finder where we look up on My Fantasy League and we see trades that are done, including a particular player. Then there's a trade analyzer where you can plug in draft picks, players, and we assign a lifetime value to draft picks out 5 years. The best thing about our trade analyzer, it can't be gamed with volume. And there's mock draft data to see right now what's the market for player X versus player Y, including in the fall when very few mock drafts are happening. And our Dynasty guide, the Dynasty Dominator, would cost you $10 on Amazon, but you get it for free with Dynasty Deluxe, and you get our rookie guide for free, a $25 value. So you get all of that for $45. I mean, it's a great deal. I was drafting a lot of Bijan and Breece Hall in the middle of the first round on Underdog for the last 2 or 3 months. Then the Jets go out and they draft a bunch more running backs, including Braylon Allen, a workhorse from Wisconsin. Any concerns about Breece Hall, or just close your eyes and draft him?
Yeah, I don't think a lot, and obviously a lot of wasted draft capital for the Jets. Remember, they took backup running back last year too. They've just been lighting back day 3 capital on fire after they drafted Breece Hall.
Why would they? The Abanikanda
it makes no
pick
sense.
Was actually, I thought the Abanikanda pick was particularly egregious because they had Michael Carter already. They didn't need him, and he's totally redundant with Breece Hall.
Isaiah
It's
Davis.
just a far inferior version of Breece Hall. What are you doing? Why are they? What are they? There's plenty of running backs you can always scoop up on the waiver wire to backfill your roster. Why are they burning these picks?
No clue what Joe Douglas is doing. But to answer your question, no, I'm drafting Breece Hall. Only Christian McCaffrey had more total yards than Breece Hall last year. And that happened basically in a season where Breece Hall, he didn't play more than 50% of the snaps in a game until week 5. He was on one of the worst offenses in the league. So I just think even if you're going to offset, like he concedes some touches and some catches, because remember, he had 95 targets last year. He probably doesn't get that this year. But the offense is just going to be so much better, and the offensive line is going to be so much better. I mean, you're going to be fully removed from an ACL injury. We're going to get Aaron Rodgers back, hopefully. And then you look at last year. I mean, so the Jets' most frequently used offensive line combination last year was on the field for 143 total plays, 13.6% of their offensive snaps. It was the lowest rate in the NFL last season. That's going to be better. Obviously, they get Morgan Moses, they get John Simpson, they take the swing on Tyron Smith, they draft an offensive lineman in the first round. We hope Elijah Vera Tucker can finally stay healthy for a season.
All in on offensive line, man. I love that.
Everything. I just think even if you're going to concede some touches from Breece Hall, the other pros get better. He's just going to be in a lot better offensive environment, a year removed from that ACL. And Breece Hall is a guy that checks every box we want from a running back. Yeah. So I mean, he's just significantly better player than those other guys they've added on day 3 the past 2 years. So I'm not really concerned about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no concern. You're just hoping that just maybe he falls a couple picks, and then you can get more of him. That's it. I mean, on Underdog, he fell 0.2 pick. His ADP went from 6.5 to 6.7. So,
and we don't have like this archetype of running back. We talked about it just a second ago with Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, we don't have very many guys left at the running back position that can create true positional leverage at the running back position. This is where gamers get wrong in terms of drafting an RB1. This is why every year, you're going to hear it this summer. Joe Mixon's been a top 12 running back for 4 years in a row. Who gives a shit? Like, what having the RB10 doesn't mean anything. having the RB8 doesn't mean anything. Having the RB1 means something. Having a guy that can create that kind of positional leverage. And we don't have the archetype of guys that are like Breece Hall, like Christian McCaffrey, like Bijan Robinson. We don't have many of those guys. They're a finite resource now for fantasy football. This is what's made the position different than it was a decade ago, when your father-in-law was just drafting 4 straight running backs at the start of the draft, right? Like, or if you go on Underdog right now and you see that you can still get, a guy like Rachaad White in the 6th round and Isaiah Pacheco in the 6th round. Like, there's a reason that's happened. We don't have guys like Breece Hall. Like, you have to treat him that he could create actual positional leverage for you, and he should be accounted for.
Yeah, well, Rachaad White's really good too. That's the thing. I mean, it's kind of incredible that back-to-back years you can sort of build your roster around, a hero RB as late as the late 4th now for Rachaad White. He was going 6th round last year. I mean, he is the most underrated player in fantasy the last couple of years, right?
I mean, for last year, he was definitely an undervalued player that I was in, and he's looking really, even my projections and everything, super undervalued, because I don't really see a guy like Bucky Irving's a worse version of Rachaad White, in every sense.
Thank you.
And that's another situation where you hope the offensive line gets a little better from year one. But, Baker Mayfield has been a guy that's thrown to running backs a lot in his career. And he was at the highest rate last year of giving, Rachaad White kind of these freebies in the passing game. And that just kind of, those add up, especially in full point PPR. And it did for Rachaad White, giving him a high floor. And you look at Rachaad White, I mean, 76% of his backfield touches, last season. That's hard to come by. We don't really see that, as much anymore. That was only 2nd in the NFL behind Joe Mixon. So I'm not really scared of Bucky Irving. This is a guy that, again, we talked about the Oregon situation, and they were the number 1 offensive line in the country last year. He was a guy that ran against light boxes, that didn't really have to do anything in the run game. And when he had to kind of have those runs against heavy boxes, against tougher fronts, he wasn't effective as a runner. I don't think we'll see that kind of translate to the NFL. He's a very unathletic player, 6th percentile. 100 sub 200 pound back. He's a very just worse version of everything Rachaad White does. So I expect him to get another high workload this season. Rachaad White.
He is the Israel Abanikanda to Rachaad White.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Just a far, far inferior version of an existing stud, and just enjoy your stud and don't get distracted by these guys that are going in day 3 that don't fucking matter. Now,
yeah, and there's a lot of that in this draft class because of the running back class in general. We're trying to make wine out of water for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, you don't want to make wine out of water, especially with Bucky Irving. He's the one. Be like, why do you have Bucky Irving so low? I'm like, why would anyone have him high? It doesn't make any sense. Who cares? Why are you asking me about Bucky Irving? But you have a running back who was the focal point of a national championship team, who goes day 2, who has an all-purpose skill set, good but not great at everything. That guy is going to take touches and is going to be productive in the NFL, most likely. So Kyren Williams cannot just stay posted up where he is like Breece Hall. It's not possible. Can't do it. Are you seeing any Kyren Williams take lock out there?
I'm seeing the opposite, right? Like, I'm seeing like almost a universal panic on Kyren Williams right now. Like, it's maybe too far, right? Because I get it. Like, anytime you have a running back, especially, go from being like just a throwaway pick, which is what he was last year. Everyone that drafted Kyren Williams got house money last year. You drafted him in round, 17, 18, 19, 20 in some of these leagues, and you got that free roll, and he absolutely smashed. And anytime those guys immediately become like a round 2 pick, or it's always, especially at running back, you always get a little bit of the EBGBs.
Well, aren't they all, those guys have been the most fugazi players in the history of fantasy.
Right. So it's always kind of questionable. But now you also have like there's a couple of things in play here. One, also, Kyren Williams, not a big back. He's very, like him and Blake Corum, Williams was 194 pounds, 5'9". And the first time he got a significant workload at the NFL, he kind of broke down. He did. He missed multiple games last year. He had foot injuries. He had ankle injuries. He leaves the playoff game with an injury. So we definitely wanted insurance because remember the Kyren Williams backups last year were god awful. With Williams off the field last season, the Rams running backs were 25th in the NFL in EPA per rush. They were dead last in 3.3 yards per carry. They were always going to upgrade the depth behind him because the guys that they had behind him last year were god awful. And he was a guy that got banged up. Now, we also seen like he was hyper efficient though, like as a player. There were 49 running backs last year at 100 or more carries, 5th in yards per carry, 2nd EPA per rush, 2nd in success rate, 7th in rate of runs that were a first down or touchdown. He was 12th in explosive run rate. And we've also seen that anytime under Sean McVay, if there's been one lead guy, that guy's incredible for fantasy football. You look at it, since McVay's been there, they've had 66 games where a running back has had 60% or more of the backfield carries. In those games, that running back has averaged 19.3 PPR points per game. They have a 56% hit rate to turn in an RB1 game, which is actually absolutely stellar. Like we want the Rams RB1 when there is a Rams RB1. We've seen it tried or true. It's been not just Todd Gurley. It's been Darrell Henderson at times. It's been Cam Akers at times. It's been Kyren Williams at times. You ask what can Corum cut into Kyren Williams year one? We have seen guys that have been drafted. Remember they drafted Darrell Henderson in 2019 in round 2. He only ended up with 43 touches as a rookie. I do think that this is a different situation because remember Darrell Henderson coming out of Memphis into an actual NFL run game. There was a huge transition for him. Like there was a huge hurdle it took for him to kind of get out of that Memphis runway tarmac system and learn how to run with nuance and a zone blocking scheme in the NFL. We also seen Cam Akers though get drafted in round 2 the year after that, and then he was slow rolled into the NFL.
That's different. I think that was an off-field clash, and that was a total knucklehead factor with Cam Akers. And Blake Corum is the opposite. I think that they learned their lesson with Cam Akers, and they didn't really look at the mentals at all. And with Blake Corum, they're like, no, we're going to go with the last thing you need is a position that's not that important to be dragging down the locker room. Like that's that was more. So we're just going to go with a Blake Corum, a guy that like is an undeniable.
I don't know if that was
guy.
True rookie year Cam Akers. It definitely was subsequent years when he came back, especially from the injury. But if you look at Corum, like he's kind of like you said, he's in that Najee Harris, Brian Robinson kind of, not to use 2 Alabama guys, but
no. Brian Robinson was a 3rd round pick. It's perfect.
But like these guys that don't necessarily pop off the page, but they just do a lot of shit coaches like.
Yes, he is Brian Robinson. He's a little bit more athletic version of Brian Robinson. That's the perfect comp.
And he's not going to do anything wrong, and coaches like that, right?
Exactly. And he's going to be the leader guy. That's what I'm saying. He's going to be the locker room guy.
So it just depends. I have no idea how the split's going to play out, though. I mean, it's really hard to just we're guessing. Like we have all, like you said, like all these different pulling threads. Anyone saying that they know for sure is absolutely lying to you. We don't know who gets goal line carries. They're very similar in terms of archetype too. I mean, both these guys are built like almost identical. When you heard the post draft pressers from Sean McVay and Les Snead, they basically kept saying that Corum and Williams, they saw them interchangeable, right? Like they saw them as kind of interchangeable assets. So it's very hard to kind of project what goes on. I will say though, if everyone is scared of Kyren Williams, that also creates kind of maybe a potential chance to get in, and like he becomes a little bit undervalued too as well. But I mean, if you're drafting an underdog, it doesn't matter because everyone's just taking wide receivers and you fall behind the curve. So, and he's not the Breece Hall. He's not the Bijan Robinson, right? Because he didn't catch passes last year. And the Rams were actually dead last in the NFL in throws to their running backs. So, again, he's not checking all those boxes we want to, like you say, we have to go all in on this guy.
I am in the midst of trying to reconfigure my video setup because my blackout blind decided to just fall down during a show. It could fall down at any time, right? It could have fallen down last night. It could have fallen down earlier this morning. It could have fallen down yesterday when I didn't have a show. It chose to fall down when I'm having a show because that's what. But I'm very agile and it's already been fixed, and I'm feeling great about it. What about incumbents that were kneecapped like Kyren Williams, but not as blatantly, a little bit more under the radar? Who's the guy that maybe has day 3 competition that you're really worried about?
I don't know if there really is a lot of that. Obviously, I mean, you have to factor in just the way the Bills used James Cook, like what could happen to him, like especially, I mean, last year he was giving away money touches to just far like inferior like talents, like, and that's always a point. If the Bills are giving those touches to Latavius Murray and Ty Johnson, Latavius Murray outsnapped James Cook 25-13 inside of the 5-yard line last year in situations needing 1 to 3 yards for a new set of downs. He outsnapped him, 75-60, out-touched him 38-32. And now you've got a kind of a guy like Ray Davis who's potentially better than where Latavius Murray was in that regard last year. You have to be kind of concerned, especially because James Cook now is one expensive. He has 4 rushing touchdowns in his career through 2 years. Like it's just really hard. It's just really hard to use tangible capital on James Cook. I love him as a player, and I love what his upside could be if he got all the touches. And we haven't accounted for Josh Allen, right? Like, because the Bills adopted the tush push too last year. The Bills were like, the Bills got religion the final third of the season. We're like, why don't we just do that every time we need a yard? And they started doing it too. So like James Cook, now that he's expensive and costs you basically, fringe RB1 capital, is a tough click. It is a tough click. Like, because how many touchdowns are you going to get out of this guy? Like, that's what carries you. So like touchdowns are like, you don't want them to be the be all end all, but they're the savior for when you have like a 60-yard game. You don't brick, right? You don't brick out when you have a 60-yard game and a touchdown. Like, if you look at James's Cook game log last year for fantasy football, the weeks he didn't score a touchdown, like he was royally effed for fantasy football. So
no,
like,
I think Ray Davis is a problem.
Yeah, so he becomes like an issue for him, especially because his skills, because Ray Davis can do a little bit in the pass game, right? He can do a little bit. He's one of those guys that is like a ham and egger, right? Like he's another guy that doesn't blow people away, but like he's been productive everywhere he was. I do think it's interesting, though, that his offensive coordinator had a shot to draft him and didn't, and instead they took Bucky Irving. That's also interesting as well. Layer there, too. But
well, okay. I mean, the bottom line is I think Ray Davis is discount Blake Corum this year. And James Cook is a sell. That's in the chat, too. So let us know in the chat. Do you think James Cook is a sell? Is James Cook a sell? I don't know. 100%. Depends on, what you can get for him. But generally speaking, is he worth putting on the trade block? Yes. Oh, yeah. Trading James Cook is not going to cost you a league title. That's the bottom line.
Never.
That is the bottom line. Same thing with Javonte Williams. Like, if you're worried about Audric Estime, then you could the offense is going to be so anemic in Denver that what are you really gaining with Javonte Williams?
I mean, dude, I just think that draft class was cursed. We just ran it down kind of in the open of the show. Like, there's a place in the multiverse. There definitely is another world where it worked out for Javonte Williams, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Akers was in that draft.
We talked about Akers already.
Dude, I mean, all
the
these
most
guys,
cursed draft class ever.
They all, I mean, you look at, because Javonte Williams had, like, he tore his ACL, his LCL, and his PCL. Like, anyone hoping for him to be an effective player last year, like, we saw it. He was sapped, dude. Like, everything. Before last year, he forced a missed tackle on 32% of his rushing attempts. That was, like, his hallmark.
Yeah, and lateral quickness is what you lose the most when you have a knee injury.
Last year, forced the missed tackle on 15.5% of his rushes. Cut it in half. And you can say, all right, he's a year removed. Maybe you get some of that back, but he's dead. This regime didn't draft him. He's in the final year of his rookie contract. We know Sean Payton wants to run a committee inherently. This is what he does. And he still has Jaleel McLaughlin there. They have Samaje Perine, who's going to play on pass downs. That's what he does. And then you add Audric Estime to potentially be like, to cut into like his early down thumper role, which is what basically all he could facilitate in as last year in the Denver offense. was that. So I just feel bad for all these guys. I mean, I want to have hopium lit for these guys but like they're dead. Like the injuries that happened at the running back position of these guys, it's just hard to say like J.K. Dobbins is ever going to recover. Akers is ever going to recover. Javonte Williams is ever going to recover. And honestly, Edwards-Helaire had a bunch of injuries too. He didn't have as significant as injuries as those other guys. But like he had a ton of injuries, man. Yeah. Ankle injury, like he dealt with a bunch of shit too. So it's just like, there's definitely another world where those guys all worked out, but it wasn't this one.
No, it's not this particular version of the multiverse. Now, I'm not saying put DeVon Achane on the block, but I do love some Jalen Wright in rookie drafts.
You should.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and obviously Mike McDaniel. You got to love Mike McDaniel. He's that dude.
I mean, it's a straight line, right? This is not a hard this is not a hard piece of advice to give. This doesn't take like a super tall logic ladder to climb up here. It's pretty basic.
No. Mike McDaniel is that dude that played Madden and sorted by one attribute. He was like, none of the other shit matters in this game except for speed. And like he's just trying to get the fastest humans that play the sport of football on the field at the same time. It's been the game plan since Mike McDaniel's been there. You gotta love it. Him drafting, the fastest running back in the draft class, just an explosive play machine. Because Achane, again, another one of these guys, he's never going to get 250 touches in an NFL season. Never. We saw it last year. He was banged up the entire season, but when he was on the field, dude, instant cooking offense, man. Like, dude, he had a run of 10 or more yards on 22% of his carry. He averaged 8 yards per carry, 7.8 yards per carry. No other running back in league history has averaged more than 7 yards per carry on 100 or more rushes. The highest rate of running back touches to go for explosive runs, the only one higher than Achane was Alvin Kamara back in 2017, had a higher rate. Like, this is the type of player we're looking for to have. Like, he's Jamal Charles in a bottle. Like, he's just never going to get that workload. Raheem Mostert's going to be 32 years old.
Ugh.
Like he's not going to play forever. He's going to be out of there. So, like, yeah, I mean, you're going to see probably a Jalen Wright, DeVon Achane 2025 backfield, right? Like in unison.
No, you're going to see a Jalen Wright explosion game this season.
Yeah, eventually, yeah. Mostert misses time, goes down. Achane misses time, goes down. He's going to be in that. But, like, I'm just saying for dynasty purposes moving forward, like, that backfield is just going to be so interchangeable. Like, they're just going to be big play machines, man. And we've seen that run scheme in general, too, is so great. I'm curious to see if the fullback makes it back. It has a little bit of a renaissance. We saw Bobby Slowick, get a job last year. A lot of people, are going to talk about how much 11 personnel Houston's going to run. But Joe Mixon's also going to run behind a fullback for the first time in his career. Joe Mixon has 30 carries in his NFL career with a fullback on the field. He's going to clear that by like week 8 this season. And then if you also look at Andy Reid used a pre-draft visit on Carson Steele, who they signed after the draft. And they, like, I wonder, and Andy Reid also used the pre-draft visit on Ben Sinnott, who's like an H-back, fullbacky type. You saw when Cliff and those guys drafted him, the first thing they brought up about Ben Sinnott after the draft was his blocking, and they compared him to Kyle Juszczyk. So, like, I think Andy Reid also is cooking up to bring back the fullbacks. Remember, they haven't used the fullback in the Andy Reid offense since Anthony Sherman left Kansas City to jump to Arizona. I think Andy Reid's going to be cooking up to do some more fullback type shit too this year as well. So I wonder if the fullback's going to have like a little bit of a renaissance coming back into NFL run games. Because you want to go and play 2 high safeties? What's the answer? We're going to get into bigger sets and we're going to run the football up the middle of the field on you. Like, and I just wonder if we see a little bit more of that kind of going on in the NFL.
Well, this is what Nick Saban and Bill Belichick were talking about on that whatever that show is, where they get together at Nick Saban's place and they talk and the cameras are running and they're just chit-chatting about football. You ever see that?
No, I haven't seen it, but I mean, I would love to. I'd love to just be
that's
where like
exactly
these guys
what they talked about. They talked about the trend of, all these teams in both college and the NFL switching to nickel and dime defense, and the natural sort of adjustment that every offensive coordinator needs to make is just to bring in more jumbo personnel packages. right? Bring in 12 personnel, bring in the fullback, and get bigger. And that you're always trying to, put the defense on their heels, whether it's you being faster than them and you getting around their big slow guys, or if they have too many small guys, push them to the ground. Like that's the beauty of football. That's why it's a great sport. That's why we love it so much, because there is no, oh, this has been solved. Oh, analytics, broke the game. It changed everything, like with baseball, right? Where fundamentally the game has been changed so much that people don't recognize it. No, it's like you could be in a time machine and be like, you're right back to 1995. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun, man. I'm just curious. Yeah, I'm curious to see that. But I mean, Jalen Wright was made to play in this offense. I mean, he was a guy when you look at that offense at Tennessee, which also was not a real offense. They're always tough to evaluate those guys in the NFL. But explosive touch on 22% of his touches, 52% of his rushing yards came away breakaway runs. Like the transition is going to be pretty kind of easy for him to just come out and generate big plays. He looks like a very poor man's version of Jahmyr Gibbs, like from a profile.
Okay. It's called Belichick and Saban, The Art of Coaching on HBO Max. That's where to watch.
I'll have to check it out, man. I definitely have to check it out.
That's where you watch. And they again, they cover this exact topic better than we did, certainly, but similar. So I'd say similar, actually. And we know one team has always used a fullback. You mentioned Kyle Juszczyk, the 49ers. And they also got a very fast running back named Isaac Guerendo. Thoughts?
Yeah, good player, man. Yeah, I mean, good player. Hopefully he doesn't get cursed like the other trade-up guys that Kyle Shanahan has. I mean, there was always going to be this marriage. Like, he was made to play in this system, right? Like this outside zone scheme. It's like what he absolutely just smashed on. You have a 220-pound guy, runs a 4.3 40. Didn't get a lot of touches because he shared a backfield with Drew R. Johnson. But, I mean, look at these, outside runs. I mean, 65% of his career carries, outside runs, 6th in this class, average 6.1 yards per carry, and those 9th in this class. He is a good tackle breaker, too. But obviously he got to break tackles against, guys playing, a lot of DBs and stuff like that. But seamless fit. But what do you do with this guy in Dynasty, though? Like, he's a trap, right? Like, you need Christian McCaffrey to get injured. And, like, who knows? Like, Christian McCaffrey is going to be an interesting guy for Dynasty anyways, because, like, he's 28 years old. He's on, like, kind of the cusp where people would be bailing, but he's also Christian McCaffrey. Like, it's good. Like, I don't know what you do with Isaac Guerendo. He's not going to catch passes. Like, he's like, I don't know what you do. He feels like a trap, like, for landing spot play. Like, I don't know, man. I'm excited about the real-life version of Isaac Guerendo and the 49ers, but – like, what do we do? What do we do for fantasy?
What you trade him after one big game, as always.
Right. Yeah.
That's what we do. The bottom line is we've talked about this for years, and if there's one sort of hobby horse topic when it comes to rookie drafts that I always come back to on our big NFL coverage program that we did from Detroit, analyzing every pick, every round on the Sonic Truth, I just keep coming back to this, and again, it feels like I'm repeating myself, but then I'm on a show with two guys that claim to be big fans of the show for many years before they themselves became co-hosts, and I'm doing the same strategy, hitting them over the head over and over and over again. They can't help themselves, Rich. They keep drafting these receivers in rounds 2, 3, 4, 5. They keep drafting receivers that are probably going to bust, and if they don't bust, are not going to help your fantasy team. Instead of drafting running backs that are going to go nuclear for a game or two, and then you can flip them for an upgraded pick the next year, and you just keep the upgrade process going. They help you win individual matchups throughout the season to have these running backs stashed on your taxi squad at the back of your bench. There's very little incentive, and I know this from experience, having 10 plus dynasty teams and all these rookie drafts. I've tried dabbling in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round on receiver, and the hit rate is so pathetic, right? We have the Breakout Finder app. It no matter what I use, no matter what I try, I can't get it to work. I can't hit on these tight ends, and when I do, pseudo hit on a tight end. It's not a guy that is ever going to really net me much trade value. But time and time again, if I just ignore the flash paper wide receiver that's, falling to me at the 302, and I just go with best running back available, my teams are better for it.
Yeah, 100%. That's the way to play. And this class is tailor-made for like that strategy. Like this running back class was made.
I was telling these guys this. I was insisting this and crying about this and yelling about this for 45 straight minutes, man.
Yeah, 100%, man. It was made for it, and you have to obviously, like, we're talking about throwaway picks, so it's not like all these guys come glowing, but Kamani Vidal, even I think Estime falls into that boat too,
yes.
A little bit.
I drafted him. I drafted Vidal. Of course, I drafted all these guys.
Rasheen Ali, you can get that, like, the guys you would just add, they're a play away, basically the way they fell on their depth chart, and, you catch that value, then you can turn them into something, get some surplus value or some return.
Well,
I wonder if Frank Gore Jr. We didn't mention Frank Gore Jr.
permanently. There's a guy that could be permanently valuable. Dylan Lobby.
Yeah, I've compared. What's funny is that Dylan Lobby got the Danny Woodhead comps because,
of course.
But I was comparing him to Tariq Cohen, and you remember Tariq Cohen coming out of school, and he ended up being undrafted that year, but. Tariq Cohen, small school guy, had really no rushing profile, wasn't a good runner ever. Dylan Lobby, not a good runner of the football whatsoever, but can give you an immediate kind of role in the NFL where you can use him as a pass catcher. And we saw Tariq Cohen have that, coming, into the NFL with the Bears. That's kind of who I've comped him to. It's like more like a Tariq Cohen, like fantasy asset. So now granted, we've been burned by this guy a lot of times, not Lobby, but that archetype, the Naheem Hines, right? Like we've been down this road before. So there is some fragility
Hines had a
here.
good year.
Yeah. But fragility wise, it exists. Cohen himself, right, was like, it kind of gave us one good year and then, got hurt and we'd never seen from him again. I think he's still floating around like the Panthers.
Tariq Cohen's on a roster?
I think he is on the Panthers right now. Yeah, hard to believe, but I think he's out there. So he only has to jump Amir Abdullah, who probably is going to play those third downs, but they can find a role for him for sure. I mean, definitely, like I said, I think you're looking at that type of archetype of player. Are you seeing if he is? I think he's on the Panthers or something. Like he was on the practice squad last year.
I am still trying to fix my lighting situation, and it's very embarrassing. And everyone's been looking at my belly button as I am trying to stop the sunlight from washing out my entire face. And so it's a struggle in these studio streets, these mansion studio streets. Very much a struggle, but we just keep grinding. We get after it. What about Will Levis? Will Levis, is anyone teed up better? Because I fell for the banana in the tailpipe last year with the teed up Kenny Pickett, the athletic quarterback with weapons,
right?
Like, let's do this, right? And then I got bananaed. So is this going to happen with Will Levis too? Feels like
probably.
Right?
Because the problem for Will Levis, like the argument to make for Will Levis is all things that don't have to do with Will Levis, but Will Levis, the player, kind of showed us the same thing Will Levis is a problem in college, right? Like the taking sacks, the accuracy, the performance under pressure, all of that stuff. I mean, he was sacked on 10% of his dropbacks. Only, Zach Wilson, Bryce Young, and Justin Fields were sacked at a higher rate. Again, the people use offensive line stuff for sacks, but like taking sacks is more of a quarterback stat. You're looking more at like pressures being more of an offensive line stat. And that people have come around to that the last couple of years. That's another thing I was early on too. The Konami code I was early on. Definitely now you see pressure. Everyone's bringing up pressure to sack stats too. And I did that shit 5 years ago. That's coming around. But you look at he had the lowest on target rate for throws 10 yards or further downfield last year. Only Bryce Young completed a fewer rate of those passes, but some of those were drops because he had really bad wide receivers. But it's easy to make the excuse for us. I will say I'm fascinated by this transition the Titans are making. I'll at least nibble on Will Levis a little bit because he has like that Josh Allen gene. And like, if you do catch lightning in a bottle, it could be big. So at least like take it. You look at, Only DeAndre Hopkins was on the field for 86% of Will Levis's dropbacks. The rest of the dudes were all shitty NFL players. The next highest players were Chigakonkwo, 67%, Nick Westbrook-Akini, 60%, Chris Moore, 54%. Then no other wide receiver tight end was on the field for more than 50% of that. Obviously, we're getting a lot better players here. It looks like they're going to sign Tyler Boyd too. It looks like as the latest things.
Baby.
But so as a default to all shitty players being on the field with Will Levis, he threw 29% of his passes to DeAndre Hopkins. The only other players over 10% were Okonkwo 15%, Tajay Spears 14%. That is going to change. We had Calvin Ridley. We probably had Tyler Boyd. If not, then maybe the ghost of Treylon Burks gets another shot. You had Tony Pollard. Then we're talking about too, like, this offense is going to be completely different. Part of why Will Levis carried such a low completion rate is because he only threw the ball downfield. No quarterback average more air yards per pass attempt than Levis last year, 10.5 air yards per pass attempt. The average among passers last year in the NFL was 7.7 yards. So he's almost 3 full yards over the NFL average. 22.4% of Levis's throws 20 yards or further downfield. It's the highest rate in the NFL. The average, 11.7%. The next closest player, which was Justin Fields, was at 14.6%. So, like, not even close. And you look at it, so from a route perspective, this was schematically a thing. 27% of the Tennessee wide receiver routes last year were on routes 20 yards or further downfield. This is like Matt Canada shit. The league average was 16.5%. Like, from a route perspective, not targets or anything, like wide receiver routes. So you had all bad wide receivers and an old wide receiver just running downfield for Will Levis. And then you talk about the 2 wide receiver sets that were only relying on vertical shots. That's going to be gone in this system now, with the transition to Brian Callahan. Obviously this coaching tree is going to run a shitload of 11 personnel, and they weren't going to get the ball out faster from Will Levis's hands this year. Now, how he adjusts to that remains to be seen. Again, like I said, I would bet against it if you're making me choose a side, but I'm at least going to nibble because of the upside factor. Titans only used 11 personnel last year, 24th in rate of 11 personnel. Will Levis was 26th in the NFL in dropback rate of 11 personnel. Also, Will Levis had Derrick Henry on the field for 260 of his plays last year. So, like, that's just as a default going to be changed. I mean, you're going to see.
Yeah, he's going to actually have running backs running real routes.
Yeah, so I mean, we're gonna see like a big transition, from Brian Callahan, and obviously that exists for Atlanta too with the hire of Zach Robinson from Arthur Smith. Like, we are talking polarizing opposite offensive schemes versus what those two teams ran last year. So again, I would bet against Will Levis if you're making me choose, but like, right. I'm at least gonna say like, why the hell not, man? Why the hell not?
Christian Kirk, quiet winner.
Yes and no, I think. Because here's the problem with Christian Kirk going back. So I think if you're asking me if Christian Kirk leads all wide receivers in the Jaguars in targets this year, yes. I say that's where he wins.
I just think Brian Thomas helps him because Brian Thomas is not redundant in any way. He stretches the field. He occupies safeties. Kirk can be a slot machine.
Yeah. But here's the problem with Kirk from a fantasy football stance. So it all depends on kind of cost and ceiling. I don't see him recouping his 2022 red zone usage now, though, with the personnel that they have. So if you think about it, last year, Kirk only had 5 red zone targets and 4 end zone targets. In 2022, he had 24 red zone targets, 13 end zone targets. Calvin Ridley last year had 41% of the Jacksonville red zone targets. That was the highest rate for any wide receiver in the NFL. He also had a league high 52% of the team end zone targets. But they got 2 guys now that they bring in Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas. Like, that's where those guys win. Those guys are probably going to get those targets in this offense. And we can bag on Gabe Davis, the NFL player, all we want, but like, he's been legitimately good with those targets, in the NFL. The only wide receivers with a higher conversion rate in the end zone since Gabe Davis entered the NFL with as many targets of him are Mike Evans and Devontae Adams. Like, Gabe Davis can totally win in that capacity. And you add Brian Thomas to the factor as well. So like, I don't see Christian Kirk getting back to that red zone usage he had 2 years ago. That's like the one bugaboo for fantasy. So like, if we're going to remove his touchdown scoring upside, again, like, where does the fantasy upside lie? But I do believe he leads the Jaguars in targets as long as barring health. And both those guys make Christian Kirk a better on-field football player.
Sure.
So I do think, yes, winner, but I do think that there is some give and take too as well.
Yeah, it's possible that Brian Thomas isn't that good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thing, right?
It exists.
So, and Gabriel Davis was a perpetual disappointment in Buffalo, even though he had these huge games. And like you said, had the incredible, red zone conversion rate. So.
And I haven't listened to a lot of the content here, so I'm sorry. But like Brian Thomas, yeah, like listen, this wide receiver class was a lie to a lot of people. A lot of people were telling you that this was a great wide receiver class. It was not. It is not. Like
a great paper, top three, great big three.
Yes, a great big three. Great big three. But then the drop-off between, like the drop-off from those players, like the production profiles, just completely mediocre. Very
awful. And they're not even that many picks away, right? Like the disparity in draft pick between Odunze and Brian Thomas doesn't even come close to explaining how different they are as players.
No, well, even I would say from Brian Thomas through where Jalen Polk got drafted, I mean, we had 7 wide receivers get drafted within 14 picks of each other. Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy, Legette, Coleman, Polk, Pearsall, McConkey, all those guys. Like you can't even let because there'd be previous draft classes where you'd be like, these guys are tiered up pretty close pre-draft, and you're like, the NFL would kind of make the decision for us. They'd be like, all right, well, this guy went way ahead of the other guy. They all went the same guy. You can't look at them. They all went in picks apart from each other, like literal picks apart from each other.
And most of them will bust. And you can't tell people this because they don't want to hear it. But most of those guys are going to bust.
I said pre-draft, and I doubled down. Now it became harder post-draft. But I said if I had mid to late first-round picks, I was trying to get out of those picks for any future first. Or the only way you play it is like you got to find a way to get multiple bites at the apple. So you just get multiple shots at these guys and you luck box because there are going to be some hits in this draft class. So, but you trying to thread the needle with one pick versus say, hey, I'm just going to take 3 of these wide receivers, 2 to 3 of them, and I hope I get the guys that break out. That's the way to play this draft class. But if you're saying like, I have the answers, I'm going to use all my picks on Keon Coleman, or I'm going to use all my picks on Ladd McConkey, it probably is not going to work out for you. It probably won't, because like this draft class is going to have a high bust rate. It's like none of these guys had great profiles. It was very pedestrian draft class after those big 3. One of the worst actually in that area of the draft. I think JJ just sent out an email about this that talked about like how bad this draft class was from a production profile stance for like the guys that got that kind of capital. So we'll see what shakes out, but you were lied to about this draft class being great.
A couple of them will be good. A Ladd McConkey,
good. It's going to happen. But it's also just inherently going to happen.
Right, but why would you even bother with a guy that wasn't very productive, who landed in a terrible situation like an Adonai Mitchell? Like, why even? Like, he's certainly not going to hit this year. So what are you even accomplishing?
I'm glad that he went to the Colts. So just kind of like for fantasy football, we could be like, all right, forget about it. Even though I know a lot of people are excited about the landing spot from a Colts stance, right? Like when you should be, right? Sure. Like from an offensive stance. Yeah. Like for fantasy football, it saves us from even have to worry because like I think one of the scariest guys at ADP right now is Michael Pittman. And like, remember, so like we didn't get to see Anthony Richardson play a full season. I'm stoked about Anthony Richardson as a fantasy asset. I am not stoked about Anthony Richardson, what he's going to do for my wide receivers for fantasy football. We only got to see this guy play 4 games, 2 full games. So we were robbed of kind of, what we saw. But like, he didn't answer any of our questions as a passer. On his small sample, he was terrible throwing the football. He completed 7.8% of his passes below expectation. It was the lowest rate in the NFL. He had a sub 60% completion rate. He was 32nd of 33 quarterbacks in completion rate at the time of his injury. He was 21st in the league over that sample in yards per pass attempt. He only completed 57.8% of his targets to wide receivers. That was 45th in the league. Michael Pittman had a 59% catch rate. Again, it's a small sample. with Anthony Richardson on the field versus a 72% catch rate with Gardner Minshew. It's like, it was kind of a lie what Michael Pittman did last year versus what we can kind of expect going forward.
Kind of a lie. It was completely Gardner Minshew driven.
Yes. And so I'm terrified of Michael Pittman's draft cost, let alone before we start talking about the guy that's going to be second or third in targets on the team. Like, so you have to be terrified of the landing spot for Adonai Mitchell, not just from like a draft capital spot or anything, but like Anthony Richardson has to prove he's capable of supporting fantasy assets like at the wide receivers. Anthony Richardson himself is going to be a great fantasy asset, but I'm terrified to own Josh Downs. I'm terrified to own Adonai Mitchell. I'm terrified to own Michael Pittman.
Josh Downs would be the one. Josh Downs would be the one. He's going to be on the field. He's going to get targets. He's not expensive with ADP. That's the one guy you would draft.
It's scary, man. It's scary. Anthony Richardson has one of the worst passing profiles of any player to ever enter the NFL.
Okay. So Christian Kirk, not really a quiet winner. Quiet, pretty good, not bad guy that you might draft.
Mm-hmm.
The chat is saying, and again, let us know in the chat who you think is the big loser versus the big winner from this draft. You know, especially the veterans like a Christian Kirk, who won, who lost. But go off the board. Don't just take the guys from the article you just read. Like, think it through. Like, for example, someone in the chat thinks Drake London is a quiet loser because now he may have himself a similar problem to Michael Pittman a year from now.
Yeah, it could. But right now, at least year one, he's going to recruit. I mean, it's another thing we talked about with this transition that from Arthur Smith to Zach Robinson is just going to carry so much weight, though. I mean, the Falcons over the past 3 years are 30th in the NFL in dropback rate. They're dead last in the NFL in 11 personnel rate. It's like all these things are going to change, right? Like for him. I mean, you look at since Drake London entered the NFL, he's actually 16th among wide receivers in target rate per route run. The problem is you don't run any pass routes per game because of the things I talked about. He's actually 70th in pass routes run per game at 27.3, which by default then now has him 33th position, only 6.9 targets per game. He's getting an immediate upgrade in Kirk Cousins. We know Kirk Cousins is at least going to play this year, which is absolutely huge because not only was Drake London forced to live on basically no opportunity, 16.3% of his targets have been inaccurate by his quarterback. The only wide receiver over the past 2 years that has a higher inaccurate target rate is Garrett Wilson. So he's going to be getting more. He's going to run more routes. As the default of running more routes, he's going to earn more counting targets. And as default of having a more accurate quarterback, he's going to have more actionable targets that mean something. And especially these red zone targets. Desmond Ridder in the red zone, 22% of London's targets were in the red zone were inaccurate. I mean, Cousins has a 12% inaccurate target rate in the red zone. 17th in the NFL, could be better, but Ridder was 32nd in an accurate target rate in the red zone. So he's going to be better. And then when you talk about this offense, we got to remember Drake London, the prospect, and then him in this offense, what it's going to be. His route tree in this offense is going to be a lot more what it was in USC than what it was these 2 years in the NFL running two wide receiver route tree in this Arthur Smith offense. Drake London was like a near the line of scrimmage yak player at USC. He could totally be used as like that Puka Nacua asset. Like he could.
Why not?
I mean, there's an opportunity for Drake London to absolutely smash next year. It is in his range of outcomes. If you want to say year 2 with Michael Penix, or, it'll be a year 4 or whatever, that could happen. But like, man, he kind of was tailor-made to play in this offense because Drake London, the prospect versus what we got 2 years in the NFL, like that guy is going to be different. Arthur Smith is gone. Kyle Pitts too. This Kyle Pitts like fear. Dude, Travis Kelce didn't even catch a pass in the NFL until he was a week before turning 25 years old. Kyle Pitts already has a 1,000-yard season in the NFL. He's not even as old as Travis Kelce was then. Travis Kelce was even a tight end until a tight end 1 until he was age 27. This Kyle Pitts shit, like Kyle Pitts is still a risky asset. You should be happy to have Kyle Pitts. You should hold him. And I know a lot of people are like, it's just hopium. Everyone going back to the well on Kyle Pitts. It's a new offense. Kyle Pitts is still one of the most prescient tight end prospects we have ever had, and he's been a prescient tight end performer in the NFL, even if you've been let down the last 2 years.
I mean, is there any tight end that has more upside at ADP than Kyle Pitts?
Not even close.
Not even close.
Not even
like
close.
I love fading guys like Kyle Pitts into oblivion until it's time to buy.
That's where we are.
Yeah.
I've never in redraft, you can literally go look at all my work the past 3 years. I have never once from a redraft stance been in on Kyle Pitts.
No.
This year I am.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Dude, this offense, people are underestimating what this offense is, just how different this offense is going to be. And what Kyle Pitts and Drake London are going to be asked to do as players versus what they were asked to do 2 years in Arthur Smith's offense. It's going to be so significantly different.
And I have 10 more questions, 10 more burning questions for Mr. Rich Hribar, Lord Reebs, after this. Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early Bestball leagues that start in February and Dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest and bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it! 10 burning questions. 10. Burning. Gonna burn them down. Who was your favorite draft pick last weekend?
I mean, my favorite draft pick was Xavier Worthy, but not for Xavier Worthy purposes. I mean, everything the Chiefs have done this offseason has been so good, man. And it's so crazy that the Chiefs tried to give the NFL like a hall pass last year. The Chiefs had like basically the worst offense they've had in the Mahomes era by far. And they did have the best defense in the Mahomes era too, which did help them. But and they still won a Super Bowl and still win the Super Bowl. Like, dude, they're gonna be so good this year at the Chiefs. It's I know people that's boring, but like, man, Mahomes. This is what Mahomes did last year. This probably, and this ties into my take I had earlier in the show about the fragility of that archetype, the non-Konami guys, because Mahomes even bottomed out last year. Career high interception rate, career low touchdown rate, career low yards per pass attempt, career low yards per completion, career passing yards per game low. He was 10th in success rate. How about this? On throws 10 yards or further downfield, Patrick Mahomes was 28th in the NFL.
Shut the fuck up.
28th in the NFL.
Shut your dirty mouth.
On throws 10 yards or further
say,
downfield.
What?
He completed 45% of his passes. He had 2 touchdowns, 9 interceptions on those throws. And now we add Xavier Worthy. We already added Hollywood Brown to this. We're going to get a small Rashee Rice, but like this offense is going to be more capable to throw the ball vertically than it was last year. Now, Xavier Worthy was also not a guy that won the bombs. He's not going to be like Tyreek Hill, but he's a more functional receiver than guys that have that have been the typical speed guys coming out of the NFL. Like, none of these guys that ran you always see that list of like the list of 40 times. This is how they performed in the NFL. All those guys were shitty receivers. Jacoby Ford, Darius Hayward-Bay, Stephen Hill, Tyquan Thornton, like Trindon Holiday. Why do I need to see a list of Xavier Worthy with J.J. Nelson on it? Like, J.J. Nelson never was good. Like, why do we care? Like that he ran, like it didn't matter. Like, Xavier Worthy has the best production profile of the speed guys, but I care about it for Mahomes. I care about this for Mahomes because of those reasons I laid out. We had a year where Patrick Mahomes was 28th in the NFL on throwing 10 yards or further downfield, and they won a Super Bowl. Like, you guys, you had a chance, NFL. You had a chance for someone else to win one. And
then they let Worthy slip to Kansas City. Big mistake.
And also don't discount I don't discount what Hollywood Brown adds to this team. So over the past 2 years, Hollywood Brown 22% inaccurate target rate. Just you look at the quarterbacks he played with. He played with 6 different quarterbacks in Arizona. He's getting Mahomes now. Since entering the NFL, Hollywood Brown averages 23.4 yards per touchdown catch. The only players to average more yards per touchdown catch with as many touchdowns as Hollywood Brown since he entered the NFL are A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, and Jahmyr Chase. Since Tyreek Hill left Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes the last 2 years. Last year, 9.5 yards per touchdown pass. Only Bryce Young was lower in the NFL. In 2022, 12.2 yards per touchdown pass, 29th in the league. He's thrown 10 passing touchdowns from outside the red zone since Tyreek Hill left. He had 56 of those touchdowns with 2018 to 2021 to Tyreek Hill is the most in the NFL. We're going to have a more vertical passing component to this Chiefs offense than we had since Tyreek Hill left. And, they didn't have that the past 2 years.
And fewer Kelsey targets, thank God.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sucks. It sucks because, it's the Chiefs. The rich get richer, but, what are you going to do?
I think it's kind of cool if you were, thinking about Marquise Brown. I've been out on Marquise Brown my whole life until now.
Yes, same thing, man.
Right. The thing is, I wasn't even in on him, pre-draft. But now that they have Worthy, and now that Worthy is this great distraction, right? This shiny object. Now, at this point, Marquise Brown, who will have a more productive season than Xavier Worthy this year.
Yes,
that is going to happen. He's going to. Yes, of course.
I tried to. I secretly wanted to backdoor this. I secretly wanted to
moment. We're hold, on Kyle Pitts. Hold, strike. Hold, strike. Marquise Brown and Kyle Pitts this year.
And I don't know if from Dynasty, I don't want to get too aggressive with Brown because of if he does regenerate value, he's going to generate. The Chiefs aren't going to be able to afford him next year. So I want to do I'm still giving away. If anyone wants to trade me Hollywood Brown for a 2 in this draft, fucking send it.
Oh,
ship
God.
it. Ship it, baby. It is out the door. It is easily out the door. But underdog, he's going to be one of my most popular picks, in these drafts. Because Worthy's going to be going ahead of him, and I'll definitely, I'm in, man, all the way. I wanted to backdoor this into a pro Hollywood 2024.
Yes, I would much rather have 1 year of Hollywood Brown than 0 years ever of Xavier Legette. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Because congratulations, you just drafted Xavier Legette. You'll never get anything out of it. Why not just get a year of Brown?
Adonai Mitchell's, these pick where you're getting 80 Mitchell and everything. So
yeah, 80 Mitchell's even better. Xavier Legette is widely renowned because people actually now, thanks to us and RotoViz and others, appreciate early career production. So the Legette fade has been on since the pick came in. But, Adonai Mitchell was viewed as good, right? He's viewed as generally good, and, you just draft good players and these things. And it's there's times, but Josh Downs is also good. Michael Pittman also good. And if you're in Dynasty, you have to look at where the window is. You can just get Adonai Mitchell for nothing next year. So just don't waste the pick. Just get running back X, draft Ray Davis, whoever it is, and be happy. Be happy that, we gave you the correct advice. It's as infallible of a strategy to avoid the Adonai Mitchells and avoid the Xavier Legettes and just go running back, close your eyes. It's as good advice as I could ever give anyone in Dynasty. I can't, if someone said, hey, what's your best advice? That's it. That's it. Everything else is a distant second in terms of just managing the rookie draft. What about the potential risk that no one is talking about to Justin Jefferson having a rookie quarterback who could be overrated?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Justin Jefferson also perform with Nick Mullins, though. So, he's just so good, man. And one thing I do believe, and I know that this is not, and we are not those people, but the coach trutherism, but I do think Kevin O'Connell is one of these guys that does get it. Like a Mike McDaniel, like Kevin O'Connell has shown like he's going to get the ball to his best players pretty consistently. And like I value that in the coaching versus say like, well, he's like this kind of wizard X and O's, but like he's going to get Justin Jefferson the football. He's kind of showed that even over that stretch. But Justin Jefferson did have some volatility to him a little bit. I think at worst case scenario, you're getting like a Devontae Adams-esque kind of season where like he's still gonna have like some big games. And then
Devontae Adams in 2023. That's what I'm thinking is very possible in the Justin Jefferson range of outcomes.
But he's going to get 170 targets. Like there's just, like he's going to like, it's like, especially with Hawkinson being out, like Hawkinson might not come back at all next year. And if he does, it's probably gonna be like mid-season. Also the Vikings don't have a wide receiver 3. Like they don't. Like if you look at their roster, like they don't have a wide receiver 3. So like with Hawkinson being out and just basically Addison and Jefferson, like Jefferson's gonna have a shitload of targets. I do think if you're using that to split hairs versus like taking Ja'Marr Chase versus Justin Jefferson, or like that's fine. I think that's fine, but like he's not gonna fall out like really like that far. But I could see it where like he's just very volatile.
On our dynasty rankings, we have Jordan Addison as a top 20 receiver.
Yeah, that's rough. That's scary, man. Are you not scared about that?
I'm scared. I'm scared about it. I am. I am scared. This is a risk. I think there's just this widely held assumption that this is efficient winner guy and that the Vikings got an incredible bargain in the draft, and I'm just not quite there yet, right? I'm not there yet. There's a reason why teams that need quarterbacks, like the Giants, looked at J.J. McCarthy and they said, nah. Like that is a risk. That is a concern. If it's not a concern, then that's cognitive dissonance. You have to be concerned about that, right?
Yeah, I mean, and also just look at Addison. So one, if we're concerned about potentially a quarterback hurting Justin Jefferson, by default, that hurts the subsequent players on the roster. But also look at his splits with and without Justin Jefferson as a rookie last year. I mean, he ran 323 routes with Jefferson off the field last year. On those, 19.5% target rate per route run, 22.3% of the team targets. He ran 283 routes with Justin Jefferson on the field, only 15.9% target rate per route run, 13.9% of the team targets. So, I mean, those guys last year, I feel bad for the gamers that had like picks that didn't like get Jahmyr Gibbs in the front of drafts last year and ended up with JSN and Addison. It just looks like not only did they get totally lapped by guys in their own class last year by like Puka and Tank Dell, but like then you layer in like the top of this class just being better than the top of last year's class. Real tough scenes for if you had like a top 5 rookie pick last year and you used it on JSN and Addison. At least you got something, a little bit of Addison startable.
Well, Addison had 13 fantasy points a game.
Yeah. You got usable weeks out of him, but I still think like in context of where now like they sit in like the total totem pole for rankings at the position, you probably ended up losing a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not at least JSN too. Who would you rather have, JSN or Addison?
I have an answer for that shit, man.
Oh, never mind. Don't answer that.
Don't
answer it.
And I've like been like vehemently arguing against this thing where like people are saying Adunze is going to be JSN.
Oh God!
And like
what?
Because he's playing with 2 guys, dude. So JSN's profile. This is what people felt hook, line, and sinker for. JSN's profile coming into the NFL, always from an archetypical stance, took a leap of faith. Because he was a guy that only played in slot in college. Like he wasn't asked to do anything else at Ohio State besides to rack up production in the slot. And we were like, all right, well, that's like you were talking about taking like these guys that win outside of the NFL, or treating like true alphas. And then in year 1, we said, all right, he's going to be playing with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. He's only going to be playing in the slot year 1. And guess what happened? His role required a lot of targets. If you're only going to get slot targets in the NFL, you are required to get a lot more targets than your peers for fantasy football because you need more targets to make them more actionable for fantasy football. And that's what happens when you get a guy that only had 6 air yards per target as a rookie. 36% of his targets were at or behind the line of scrimmage last year. But Adunze's not going to get, that's not Adunze's role. He's not the same kind of guy. So you can say, yes, there's a target crunch playing year one with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. But the targets, the types of targets, Rome Odunze, the football player, because yes, he's a wide receiver and JSN's a wide receiver, but they play different positions, functionally, and he's going to earn different targets as a default by playing a different position. So if Rome Odunze somehow even ends up sniffing the 93 targets Jackson Smith and Jigba had as a rookie, he's going to score more fantasy points by default because those 93 targets are more valuable than the targets JSN earned from the archetypical stance. So they're different players, different positions. It's easy to go for low-hanging fantasy analysis fruit and say, look what happened. Look what happened to JSN. That's going to happen. They're different players. They play different positions.
In Superflex, sometimes you just have to close your eyes and draft a quarterback you don't like because it's the right move. Would you do that with Bo Nix?
Yeah, just for currency. We talked about it earlier. Yeah. Like from a currency stance, any quarterback.
You don't think he's good?
No, I don't. I think and I also think it was a desperation pick for a franchise.
Total desperation.
But also
the death throes, the death rattle of Sean Payton in the NFL.
But also, quarterbacks that are starting games are finite resource in Superflex leagues, and gamers will pay for those.
All right, we got to go rapid fire. I got to get you out of here. Jonathan Brooks or Trey Benson?
I'll say only because of cost, Benson, but I do like both. I think it worked out for both these guys as good as it could have been.
Yes, it's great. Benson's our RB1. I'll just tell you right now. You can go to our Dynasty rankings on Player Profiler, but we make these flag plans. We're like, you guys are outside consensus on player X, Y, and Z. It's like, yeah, we make strategic bets on particular types of players because the upside is exquisite. On a Penix, on a Benson, we're going to pick like 3 guys and we're going to put our flag on those guys. And that's it. And
I will say that when we look at this, when we take a 10,000-foot view from this draft class years down the line and we look back on it, I do think that both Benson and Brooks versus that group of wide receivers that we already talked about is probably not as good as people think they are. Like those 2 guys could end up just having a way larger fantasy football impact than any of these guys.
Thank you.
Both of these.
You have to draft these 2 running backs over Keon Coleman, Brian Thomas, Ricky Pearsall, Roman Wilson, Xavier Legette. Get the fuck out of here with those guys. I want the running backs every time. Every time. It starts with that late first-round pick in Superflex, and you're talking about pick 109, 110 in single quarterback. You need to get these running backs. That's the way they have both more upside and higher floors. It's such a no-brainer.
Well, I mean, in the context of fantasy football, one top 6, let's just say that these guys have one top 6 running back scoring season in their career. That's worth any more wide receiver 2 season scoring wise, like any top 24 season. That's not a wide. It just carries more positional leverage.
Flushing Jordan Addison and JSN down the toilet, who were picks 107 and 108 last year. With the same profile, with better profiles than the guys we're talking about.
Yeah, I just think when we look back on it, it's very easy to say that Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson end up being better they had larger fantasy impact than some of these wide receivers that we've kind of talked about. So I think the landing spot was good for both. Listen, Dave Canales.
Awesome for both.
Yeah,
obvious.
Dave Canales.
I feel bad. I feel like I'm condescending the community because I'm like, you people are fools. This is obvious, right? This is obvious. This is Will Hunting trying to explain these advanced equations to the professor who doesn't have the same understanding. Even though he's won the Fields Medal and all these things, he's like, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I can't fucking make you understand how this fucking works. I'm sorry. It's not my problem that you don't get it. I've tried and I've tried to help you understand it, and you fools are still drafting these early second-round wide receivers when you should be pushing the button on the running back every time. I can't help you anymore. I've done everything I can to make you fucking understand this.
Yeah, I mean, Benson looks like an auto pick where he is going in these early drafts.
Do you know how easy this is for me? Do you know how easy it is for me to do this? You have no idea how easy this is. It's so easy for me to draft these running backs and just do it and win championships. And I'm sorry you don't understand.
I got nothing.
Go ahead. Go draft Ricky Pearsall. Go ahead. Go do it.
I can't add anything else to it.
I'm going to move to the West Coast with my girlfriend. Fuck you. Where we know where running backs should go in rookie drafts. Fools. Like, I'm done. For years, we've been trying to pat these people on their head. No, it's okay, man. Next time. You'll get them next time with these receivers. Don't worry. And then they hit, and they're like, hey, I got a hit on Jordan Addison. And then you're like, and? Now what?
Yeah, I mean, I got nothing else to add. To it.
Fools.
Absolutely. I was gonna maybe have some stats about those players. It's just it. We're done. That's all we have to say about it.
You know how easy this is?
Yeah, easy this is for me.
Do you understand how easy this is? So, but I mean, so, like you said, some of these receivers will hit. Lad McConkey is my bet of the second rounders, or any receiver drafted outside the top 10, really. I would take Lad McConkey. Do you have another one in, maybe even day 3?
McConkey, yeah, he fits. I will say, I think based on cost, gamers are just getting Jalen Polk wrong from an objective bet stance. I think maybe it's the New England wide receiver stigma, but paired with Drake May, it's all different, right? Like, everything's different. But the fact that I don't think gamers are even accounting for that, like, Jalen Polk went like 5 picks away from Ricky Pearsall, right? Like, he's like dead in these rookie drafts. He's going like a mid to late 2.
I like him a lot.
But just from an objective stance, even if you like, he just feels like an easy click at that kind of ADP, like a bet, because he went near all those other guys. He's going to have just probably his best runway for year 1 target opportunity as a lot of those guys, right? Or if not better than some of those guys like Pearsall. Like, Polk's going to have way more year 1 targets than Pearsall's going to sniff, unless we get like a trade or something. But like, yeah, I think Jalen Polk is just from a process stance, is just a very sound objective click where he goes in these rookie drafts.
Okay, what about Jermaine Burton?
Oh yeah, him too. Yeah, he's good.
I mean, Jermaine Burton's the one guy that has the.
He's upside. Just that classic boomer bust. Like, who gives a shit? Like, I'm throwing a second round pick at it.
Yeah. If there's one guy, there's an exception every year, right, to this rule. Usually the exception that you talk yourself into doesn't hit, and then you feel so foolish because you could have had the running back that had the 3 weeks and had the trade value, and you could have left him. And never mind. For me, it's Jermaine Burton, right? This is Tyreek Hill. Couldn't latch on to any school. It kicked him out of Oklahoma, and then he winds up at a small school. Basically playing special teams. It was weird, but indisputable talent profile. But you're betting on a low probability. Like, again, most of these guys are going to bust. It's a low probability. But if he does somehow decide he wants to be a professional athlete at this point, at this very moment in his career, he says, I'm ready to change my life. The likelihood of that happening is like 20%. But if it hits, it'll hit big. So that's the guy you got to that's the guy you got to go with. If we are going to draft a running back, if we are going to draft a receiver over a running back, which we're not going to do anyway, that would be Polk. But I think even more so, it would have to be Burton. What about, okay, you mentioned Pearsall. Do you think he's the most likely first rounder to bust, or is it Legette?
I mean, I'll say Pearsall just from the stance of like, he just needs so many doors to open. And I liked Pearsall as a player a lot. It's a tough fit for me, even, kind of schematically. I don't know, listen, Kyle Shannon's way smarter than me and he'll find stuff for these guys, but I don't know if he's trying to like make him like a pseudo Debo because, obviously like Pearsall has like this like Jaden Reed-esque profile. He's got like a little bit of rushing, some return stuff, but like you can't replicate Debo anyways. A lot of teams have tried and failed. But also when you look at like kind of Pearsall, like he has some underlying metrics that just like aren't as good, especially not as good as McConkey's. And they're like, he didn't earn any targets against man coverage. He didn't play with good quarterbacks, but you would love to just see the target earning against man coverage at the college level, because typically even if you have these quarterbacks that are sketchy at the college level, they're like, well, shit, I got one-on-one coverage. I'm throwing to my best guy.
Yeah.
24th in this class in target rate per route run against man coverage. Not that 18th in yards per route run against man coverage. Whereas you look at like McConkey, like anytime he was, in man coverage, he got peppered with targets. Also as an isolated receiver, Pearsall, 16% target rate on those routes. It was the lowest. He had the lowest target per route rate as an isolated receiver in this entire draft class. Like even out of like all 40 of them that went to the combine. So like, and then you got to say like, all right, well, what doors need open for him? And it's easy for people to say, all right, well, the 49ers are clearly trading one of these guys at some point. But like still, we've lived this with the 49ers passing game for multiple years. The guys that are good don't get enough targets for us. Brandon Ayuk doesn't get enough targets. Like George Kittle doesn't get enough targets. Deebo Samuel doesn't get enough targets. Like we live this life with these guys.
Oh no, they're going to trade all those guys. They're going to trade all those guys. It's going to be all Pearsall.
So like I just think there's a lot. And you're talking about taking a guy like where Pearsall is going in these rookie drafts. Like I want players that are helping me now still too. Like I want to at least have the option. At least we can say Legette has a high bust factor, but like at least we know he's going to be on the fucking field. Like
exactly. Thank you.
Like. So, I mean, I'll default say Pearsall. Like, I think there's a lot that you can easily talk yourself into the capital and the landing spot being like significant pros for him. But I also think that like the landing spot and like it could kind of be trappy too as well. So I would say him. I don't know those guys, but I think all those guys are very busty.
Screw the draft capital. You knew receivers were going to go that didn't have impressive production profiles in the late first round, and they were going to get overdrafted, and they can't help themselves.
But again, people are going to say first round versus some of these other guys, but like Jalen Polk went 5 picks after him. 5 picks.
Technically, it was the first round. Technically, it was the first round. They're gonna be people will be drafting Ricky Pearsall ahead of Trey Benson. They will do that.
Yeah.
They will. I'm telling you, Rich, they don't appreciate Benson. They think the landing spot was bad somehow, which I don't understand at all. And there's just a lack of they're going to first round pick. They're going to do it. They're going to, and it pains me. It pains me to watch these people fumble around and fuck it up. You know how easy it is for me? It kills me. Just watch you fumble around and fuck these picks up.
I seen that. Wait, I turned the chat on, and Jonah's Wall posted here. Kittle, CMC, Debo, dudes are old. You know who else is old? Ricky fucking Pearsall. He's gonna be a 24-year-old rookie, and you're already talking about him potentially not getting targets in year one. So we're already talking about him like he's a 24-year-old rookie. Like the hit rate for these guys are bad, especially guys that don't produce in year one.
I hope he can outproduce Juwan Jennings. I hope he does. I honestly hope he does.
And even as a rookie, like this team's not going to run 11 personnel. They don't run 11 personnel.
No. They're going to trade all the receivers, I heard. Tyler Knable is in the chat. Our producer, our fearless producer is in the chat. He and I designed the thumbnail thinking about what you and I are going to talk about. And we were debating Legette versus Pearsall on the cover of the show for, surefire bust receivers. That was like, I don't know, whatever it was. What I forgot what the title is already. But
I like Pearsall as a player though too. I do like him.
I know you do, but what I'm saying is Tyler, we may have to flip the thumbnail. If we can get a Pearsall to replace Legette, I think that might even be a better thumbnail. No, I didn't know. I had no idea. It was an open-ended question for Rich. I had no idea he was going to say Pearsall. Our planning team.
The 49ers draft. Dude, has anyone bought like more like draft equity based on like weird, like just low guys hitting than John Lynch? Like John Lynch's like last 3 drafts look like a disaster on paper, but one, he took Brock Purdy at the last pick of the draft. It worked out. Like this year, the 49ers took one player that's not going to be under 24 years old as a rookie. from a process sense. 2 years ago, he took a kicker in the 3rd round. Like, the 49ers first round draft picks under John Lynch have been terrible outside of Nick Bosa, which was a freebie, and then Brandon Ayuk. The other guys have all been terrible. He sold the farm for Trey Lance. Javon Kinlaw was an epic bust. They trade away DeForest Buckner and try to replace him with Javon Kinlaw. He was a bust.
Kinlaw, Kinlaw looked great at the Senior Bowl. I mean, I don't fault him. The Kinlaw pick looked like the chalk pick at the time.
Yeah, Mike McGlinchey, terrible pick. He took Reuben Foster in the 1st round, Solomon Thomas in the 1st round.
Oh, Solomon Thomas. I remember the Solomon Thomas pick.
But the home runs, I mean, he's got the Kittle, Fred Warner, Debo picks on his resume, which are home runs. But the last 3 years, the 49ers draft process looks like ass on paper. It looks bad on paper.
Okay. Round 4 and 5. Give us someone deep you're drafting. We've talked about Isaac Guerendo already. We've talked about Audric Estime, but there are others.
Yeah, we talked about those, just running backs like Kamani Vidal. I think he's getting some steam.
Oh, yeah.
Like him. Rasheen Ali, if you got to throw.
Oh, Rasheen Ali. There we go.
Yeah, I think if you have to take a wide receiver like Ryan Flournoy, like, I don't know. It's like, why not? That Cowboys situation's kind of wide open, like, this year. Maybe he does something. Jalen Tolbert's clearly not good at football. Like, so, I don't know. It is what it is.
Yeah,
I got nothing. I'm just take those.
Jalen Tolbert apparently has been struggling with the playbook.
Take those just dart throw running backs or get out of those picks. Just if someone wants to give you a future, just take the future. It's probably better.
Run and hide. Frank Gore has signed with Buffalo, so that is another option.
Yeah, we didn't bring him up as part of like potentially being into like maybe fill that Latavius Murray spot too, because he's another one of those guys, Frank Gore, like Junior. Like, he's not, like, wowing, but, like, he does a lot right. I talked to Ray Garvin about this, and, like, he doesn't, like, jump off the page in one capacity, but he just, like, does a lot of things right. And, like, coaches, like, those guys tend to last more than we think that they do.
Oh, yeah. How about Brock Bowers and tight end premium? Are you steaming him up, or are you generally just not getting him because you don't respect the tight end position like some people?
I'm typically more of a gamer that likes to wait. Like, I was the guy drafting Laporta because he was the tight end 3 last year. Like, typically I'm drafting the later tight ends that have upside than paying the premium. I think the argument exists. I don't think the landing spot was as terrible as people are running and hiding. I mean, I think he has a runway to be number 2 on that team in targets year 1. I think he enters the NFL at a really good time in terms of the defensive meta of where he wins. You can just get him the football really easily. I don't know. I'm probably not drafting him more often than not just because I don't pay the premium tight end. But I do say if like we're in these leagues and like someone wants to let him fall to like 106, 108, and like I'm still going to take him before that group of wide receivers we talked about. He's a very clean prospect from like on an objective.
Yeah, you're drafting him ahead of Ricky goddamn Pearsall. I just think Jatavian Sanders later is the way to go if you're in tight end premium.
I mean, typically that I play tight end as a more of a later.
Yeah,
it's just the way I play it. You typically have the 2 buckets of tight end players, right? The people that want to pay that premium because they want to have that leverage, right? Like I want to draft a player that gets me that leverage. Then you have people that are just like, well, I'll just throw some tight ends at the wall and I hope to run into some shit. I'm typically that latter bucket of guy.
Texas skill position players that somehow landed on Carolina. It's the way to go. Give us your truther guy, the guy you're not dropping in Dynasty.
I don't know. Who am I not dropping in Dynasty? I mean, does Drake London count as a truther guy? It feels like you guys are trying to pressure me into him being like not good. I mean, both of the Falcons guys.
Whoa. What happened? Was it in the chat?
I don't know. You guys are, it's like a pseudo loser.
No, the people that are the 3D chess people are saying Drake London is, could be in trouble.
If Penix is the guy.
Kirk Cousins is not.
I want to give you a better guy.
Going to last long prepared. In Atlanta. That's the thesis. I wasn't agreed with that. I think it's an interesting conversation.
Who are you? Because remember last year I truthered for Khalil Shakur. And that actually looks like it could be like a good value. He's actually treading water or looking up. Who do we
tight end? Do you have any tight ends that you're still like? For example, I think Luke Musgrave is still going to be the guy in Green Bay. I'm a big Luke Musgrave guy.
Yeah, I actually, you know what? Here, I'll truther for. You know who I'll truther for? Since you teed me up, is Christian Watson still.
Yes, there you go.
I'll truth it for Christian Watson.
That's
like
good. That's
just
a good
just
one.
snake bit, but like we did this shit with Keenan Allen. Not saying that they're comparable players, but like he's just been snake bit, man. But look at any time Christian Watson was on the field, even last year, he was the clear alpha on this team. So look at when he was a full go, right? His first game, he came back and played his full game. He had 91 yards. And then before he injured his hamstring again in week 13, he had a 3-game run of scoring touchdowns. He had 5 for 94 and 1 touchdown Thanksgiving Day. He was one of the few wide receivers that gave the Chiefs problems last year with 2 touchdowns in that game where they beat them. So I think from a talent perspective, he's just a lot more talented than that, because it's a real gaggle of guys in Green Bay now, and like people are trying to sort it out. But from an overall talent perspective, he's more talented than all those guys. I'll truth it for Christian Watson, man. I'll be the one to do it.
Do it. What about a bold prediction? Get you out of here.
Oh, I gotta stay on brand, dude. Jaden Daniels, top 5, 24 redraft quarterback.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.